Have you ever wondered why, no matter how much you achieve, learn, or heal, there's still a quiet feeling that something is missing, like there's a part of you that's been forgotten, hidden just out of reach? That feeling isn't a flaw. It's not confusion. It's a sign, a signal from your soul that something ancient, something sacred within you is waiting to be remembered. There exists a truth so powerful, so life-altering that the moment you touch it, you begin to remember who you truly are, not as a name, a role, or a personality, but as a soul, a presence that existed long before you were born and will exist long after your story here ends. This truth isn't new. It's older than words, and it's been kept hidden for centuries, not because it was lost, but because the world wasn't ready, because a person who truly remembers who they are becomes impossible to control. You stop living for validation. You stop operating from fear. You no longer need permission to exist, to shine, to be free. And freedom is the greatest threat to a world built on systems that depend on you staying asleep. That's why this truth was never taught in schools, never printed in books, never handed out to the masses. It was protected, carried in silence, passed on in whispers. Because when misused, it doesn't just wake you up, it can unravel everything you think you are. But now, the time has come. The doors that were once locked are slowly opening again. The memory that was buried is rising. And what once lived only in hidden temples and secret initiations is starting to awaken in the hearts of everyday people. People like you, who feel that something deeper is calling them home. This remembering doesn't begin with knowledge. It begins with stillness, with learning to quiet the noise of the mind long enough to hear what's been whispering beneath it all along. And when you start to look at ancient civilizations, not with the eyes of a tourist, but with the ears of your soul, you'll notice something strange. Civilizations that had no contact with one another, separated by oceans and centuries, all started saying the same things about life, about the soul, about the universe. From ancient Egypt to India, from Greece to the Andes, they all echoed the same haunting truth. Humanity has forgotten who it truly is. This forgetting wasn't seen as evil or shameful. It was seen as part of the journey. But they knew the pain of that forgetting. They spoke of it in symbols, songs, sacred rites. They didn't shout it. They protected it. Because the process of remembering is not easy. It is not comfortable. It is not safe for the ego. In Egypt, they said the soul didn't fall from grace, but fell in vibration. It entered the body like light wrapped in thick cloth, still radiant, but harder to see. The body wasn't the enemy. It was the veil. They believed that when the soul incarnates, it forgets its origin, not completely, but enough to feel the ache of something lost. That ache we carry through life isn't emptiness. It's memory. The soul remembering something real beneath the illusion of this world. In ancient India, the sages said the soul doesn't need to learn anything new. Everything it seeks is already within. The only real task is to remember. But remembering doesn't come through reading or debating. It comes through silence, breath, vibration, and surrender. It comes when the ego stops trying to be right, to be good, to be better, and lets the deeper self rise. They called this awakening not a discovery, but a return. In Greece, the Orphics taught that the soul was temporarily imprisoned in the body, not to suffer, but to awaken. They believed the soul had to forget in order to rediscover. Their sacred rituals use music, altered states, and symbolic death to help people remember their immortal nature. But these weren't public ceremonies. They were deeply protected because what they opened inside someone could not be undone. None of these traditions copied each other. They arose separately, yet their messages aligned because they weren't built on culture. They were built on truth, a truth that has no religion, no dogma, no single name, a truth that lives in the quiet of every human heart. And yet, for thousands of years, you couldn't find this truth in a book. You couldn't Google it. You couldn't casually study it, because those who carried it knew something vital. This wisdom can't be handed to anyone who isn't ready, not out of pride, but out of protection. Because when this power is touched without preparation, it doesn't heal, it burns, it dissolves everything false, it breaks illusions, it doesn't add, it takes away. And most people are terrified to lose what they think they are. So the teachings were hidden, passed in silence, carried from master to disciple, guarded like sacred fire, not to keep people out, but to keep them safe from their own unready selves. Because truly remembering who you are will cost you your comfort. It will destroy your masks. It will undo the lies you've told to survive. It will leave you naked and true. And that kind of truth changes everything. Even so, it was never lost. It lived on, in myths, in art, in symbols, in dreams. It disguised itself in fairy tales and carved itself into stone. It passed through chants, through prayers, through the tears of those who felt a deeper truth even when they had no words for it. And now, in this generation, it is returning, not to be explained, but to be felt, not through teachers, but through memory. Because the truth is not something you learn, it's something you remember. And now the question becomes unavoidable. What exactly did they do in those temples? What did the initiates experience that changed them so deeply? What happened in those sacred spaces was not magic. It was not myth. It was intentional transformation. When a seeker entered those places, they weren't going through a ritual. They were preparing to die. Not a physical death, but a symbolic one. A death of the false self. A death of the ego. They were led into such deep stillness that their consciousness separated from the body. They crossed the veil, and on the other side, no one greeted them with answers. There were no teachers there, only their own soul, already knowing, already remembering. And in that space, they recognized truths they had never studied. They saw symbols they had never learned. It wasn't new knowledge. It was ancient memory reawakening. And when they returned, they were never the same. But this process was not for the faint of heart. Some, when they saw their true nature, felt fear. The ego panicked. Some couldn't let go. They got stuck between illusion and truth, no longer able to believe the lies, but too afraid to live in truth. That's why not everyone came back whole. Some returned shattered, because they weren't ready to let die what needed to die. Thoth warned about this. He said the greatest danger is not darkness. It's touching the light before you're ready to live it. Because the ego will try to turn even truth into pride. That's why this path was hidden. Because most people don't really want the truth. They want to feel special. They want power. They want to rise. without letting go. But true awakening doesn't make you more important. It makes you more real. And being real means losing everything that isn't true. Every belief built on fear. Every mask built to please. Every identity built to hide. This is the cost of remembering. And it's also the gift. Because what's left after the false self dies is not emptiness. It's freedom. It's presence. It's peace that doesn't need a reason. Joy that isn't tied to outcomes. Power that doesn't control. It simply is. And this remembrance isn't reserved for mystics anymore. It's reaching the hearts of people in everyday life. It's speaking through your intuition, through your longing, through the ache that says, there's more. That's the soul calling you home. Not to become something else, but to remember who you've always been. And now that remembering has already begun, this is not the kind of death that ends your heartbeat. It's not the kind that takes your body away from this world. It's deeper than that. It's the quiet death of everything false you thought you were. It's the crumbling of the mask, the falling away of the role you've been playing for so long that you forgot it wasn't you. It's the death of the image you built to survive. A death that doesn't kill, but instead reveals. Most people don't even notice that they're wearing a character, performing a script written by the world around them. They don't question the story they've been cast into. But Thoth said that if you go through this process with sincerity, with courage, what awaits you on the other side isn't destruction. It's not an end. It's the beginning of real life. It's rebirth. And in that new life, you no longer need to rely on all the lies you were told about who you are, what you're worth, what you're supposed to be. You become simple again, quiet. Oh, not because you've gained something new, but because you've let go of what was never yours to begin with. But not everyone who passes through this process returns the same. Some people cross over into that inner awareness, but can't bring it back with them into their daily lives. They taste the truth but can't live it. They saw something real, but it didn't stay. They remain suspended between what they once were and what they now know is possible. They are awake, but frozen. They remember who they are, but are unable to act from that place. Thoth warned of this danger because the moment of awakening is only the beginning. The real work is learning to walk in that truth, to speak from it, to live it in every ordinary moment. That's what makes the transformation real. So what made the difference? What prepared those who made it through fully? What helped them carry the truth back into the world? That's what Thoth began to reveal. You can't pass through this invisible doorway carrying the weight of the false self. If you try, the ego will distort the process. The mask will try to survive, even in the face of truth. So Thoth didn't dress this up in soft words. He was direct, because what needed to be seen was not out there in the world, but right here inside. The first enemy is not a demon. It's not a curse. It's not anyone outside of you. It's the voice in your own head, the false identity, the programmed thoughts that whisper to you every day, telling you who you are, when really, it's just a pile of fears, beliefs, and expectations you never chose for yourself. Most of them were given to you when you were too young to question them. You were told stories about yourself, that you were too sensitive, not strong enough, not smart enough, that you have to be perfect, that you have to win, that you have to hide your pain and earn your worth. And without realizing it, you wore those words like clothes. You repeated them until they felt like your own voice. But they didn't come from your soul. They came from people who were wounded, afraid, and repeating the same patterns they didn't heal. That's how the invisible prison was built, not with chains, but with inherited thoughts. You didn't know you were trapped because the walls were made of ideas you thought were your own. You thought you were free, but you were living inside a story that was written for you by others. And this is why the journey begins here. There's no point searching for higher truths while your foundation is still full of illusions. No point reaching for light when your roots are tangled in lies. So how do you begin breaking free? Thoth offered something so simple that most overlook it. But it's powerful. It begins with observation, with awareness. You don't need rituals. You don't need books. You just need this moment. Right now, notice a thought that's passing through your mind. Any thought. Maybe it's a worry, a judgment, a fear. Now pause and ask yourself, did I create this thought? Or did someone else plant it in me? Most of the thoughts that drive your behavior every day weren't born from your soul. They were absorbed, picked up, passed down, taken in without a second thought. And the shocking part is, you didn't even notice when it happened. But now that you see it, something starts to shift. You realize you don't have to believe every thought that arises. You don't have to obey every voice in your head. That tiny space between you and your thoughts is where your freedom begins. That gap, that breath of awareness, cracks open the false identity. Because the real you is not the thoughts. The real you is the one who sees the thoughts. And once you start living from that place of awareness, everything changes. But the false self won't let go easily. It will panic. It will scream. It will try to convince you that it's unsafe to let go, that you'll be nothing without it, that you'll be lost and vulnerable. And for a moment, it might feel true, like taking off armor you've worn for years. The first moments feel raw, exposed, unprotected. But slowly, something softer begins to emerge. The air touches your skin. The light feels warmer. You realize the armor was weighing you down. You begin to feel, really feel, for the first time in a long time. And that's when truth begins to breathe again. This is the first phase of the sacred, hidden path, the part most people skip. The inner cleansing. Because if you skip this step, you'll take your ego with you into the sacred. And the ego will twist what you see. It will turn truth into arrogance. It will use insight to build superiority. It will take divine wisdom and turn it into a game of status. That's why Thoth said, cleanse first. Remove the illusions. Let go of the lies. Only then can the deeper work begin. And once you start letting go of those roles, something unexpected happens. Silence, which used to feel uncomfortable, becomes sacred. The quiet no longer feels empty. It feels alive. Questions that once filled you with anxiety no longer haunt you. You no longer need to have all the answers. You begin to rest in the unknown. You don't need to prove yourself, not to others, not even to yourself. You don't need to wear masks anymore. You are finally becoming what you've always been. Whole, free, real. And what rises next isn't something new. It's something ancient. Something that has always been waiting beneath the surface of your awareness. A part of you that never forgot. A part that's been watching quietly, patiently, waiting for you to turn inward and remember. That part is beginning to wake up now. Inside of you, there is a sound, but it's not made of words. It can't be spoken. It can only be felt. And when this part of you stirs, the way you perceive the world begins to change. It's like a fog lifts. But it's not just your vision that clears. It's your knowing. Thoth called this the single eye. It's not a physical eye. It's not logical thinking. It's not emotion. It's deeper than that. It's a raw, silent perception that doesn't need to think in order to know. This perception has always been with you, but it's been drowned out by mental noise, by your own thoughts, by other people's opinions, by the programs you were taught. You were told that to understand life, you had to analyze, compare, judge. But truth doesn't come through judgment. It comes through presence. And the single eye doesn't compare. It doesn't divide. It doesn't rush to explain. It simply sees. To see in the spiritual sense doesn't mean to look at the world with your eyes. It means to perceive life before your mind jumps in to filter it. The mind loves to label good, bad, ugly, beautiful. But the single eye just watches. It lets things be. And because of that, it taps into a dimension most people never feel. A space where nothing is broken, nothing is missing. Everything just is. Whole. Complete. You don't need 1,000 meditations to feel this. You don't need a guru. You don't need a temple. You need one pure moment of silence. Not the kind of silence where you're waiting for something, but the kind where you expect nothing, where you simply are. In that stillness, something awakens. You may not feel it right away, but something subtle opens up inside you. A space, a breath, and in that space, truth begins to emerge. Even just a few seconds of that silence is enough to begin weakening the mental noise. That's how the single eye awakens. Not through theories, not through books, but through stillness, through presence. And the more you return to that space, the more you realize life has another layer, a deeper frequency beneath the noise, a silent unity that holds all things together. But even this awareness, as powerful as it is still not the deepest part of you. Because beneath perception, beneath presence, beneath thought, there is something more, something even more personal, more sacred, more real. Thoth called it the invisible name. It's not a name like the world gives you. It's not John or Maria or any label invented by humans. It's a frequency, a vibration, a sacred sound that belongs to your soul alone. It's the deepest truth of who you are. When you touch it, you don't learn who you are. You remember. This name cannot be taught. No one can give it to you. No ceremony can hand it to you. It doesn't live in language. It lives in silence. It's not something you speak. It's something you feel deep in your spiritual heart. When your mind quiets and your heart opens, this frequency begins to rise. It's always been there, but the noise of your thoughts and the masks of the ego kept it hidden. And even if you've never known this name consciously, you felt it before, in rare moments, when everything made sense without reason, when you felt peace without a cause, when you just knew what to do, and it wasn't coming from logic or emotion. It was coming from somewhere deeper, That was your soul speaking its name through vibration, through presence, through you. But this vibration isn't something you can hold with your mind. The more you try to explain it, the farther you move from it. It's beyond words. It's not a concept. It's not a philosophy. It's you, without the layers, without the roles, without the story. Thoth said, this vibration is your true center. It's the point where you stop being a collection of emotions and thoughts and become pure being. Not someone trying to become something. Not someone performing. Just being. Silent. Whole. Free. And when this vibration becomes clear inside of you, it brings a quiet certainty. Not pride. Not arrogance. But a peace that no one can take away. You don't need recognition. You don't need approval. You don't need the world to tell you who you are. You simply know. And that knowing brings a strength that can't be shaken. But here is the part most people miss. When this light begins to shine inside of you, it doesn't only light up the beautiful parts. It lights up everything, even the shadows, even the places you've hidden from yourself. And that, too, is part of the awakening. There comes a moment on the soul's journey when everything you've tried to keep hidden begins to rise. Old wounds, buried fears, past versions of yourself that you hoped time would erase. They all begin to surface. Not because you did something wrong, not because you're being punished, but because real spiritual light doesn't only highlight the beautiful or easy parts of your life. True light reveals everything that stands in the way of your freedom. It shines even in the corners you were too afraid to look into. And when this light starts to awaken within you, many people feel fear, because what's been hiding in the dark, what's been suppressed for years, suddenly becomes visible, and it can be overwhelming. Awakening isn't always peaceful at first. When you remember who you are, you're not just reconnecting with your divine light. You're also seeing the pain, the layers, the survival strategies you built to protect yourself from this world. You remember the masks you wore to be accepted, the walls you built to feel safe, the lies you told yourself just to make it through the day. Remembering yourself means remembering not only your essence, but also everything that tried to cover it up. It means coming face to face with the wounds you picked up from people who couldn't love you properly, the beliefs you accepted just to feel worthy, the shame you swallowed so you could fit in. And when you finally begin to see clearly, it can hurt. But that hurt is not your enemy. It's the pain of transformation. It's the discomfort of healing. The ancient teacher Thoth spoke of this deep process as the purification of the soul. But this purification was never about judgment or punishment. It wasn't about being perfect or holy in some distant, unreachable way. It was about returning to what's real. Just like water naturally washes away what doesn't belong, this inner light starts to dissolve what is false within you. And it happens gently, sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. When you begin to awaken, old trauma, forgotten memories, emotional triggers, all begin to rise. Not to break you, not to pull you backwards, but to be seen, felt, and released. The fears you've carried without knowing why begin to show you where they came from. The voices that told you, I'm not enough. I have to earn love. I must always be on guard, begin to lose their power. And in their place, a new voice begins to whisper, not from your head, but from your soul. A voice that says, You are already enough. You have always been whole. It's as if your own soul becomes a light, shining into the deepest parts of your inner world. And that light doesn't harm, it illuminates. It doesn't shame, it reveals. But in the beginning, seeing the truth can be painful. It hurts to realize how much of your life was lived under someone else's story. It hurts to see how long you've abandoned yourself just to feel safe, accepted, or loved. It hurts to recognize how often you've silenced your soul just to keep the peace. But this pain is sacred. It's the pain of waking up, the pain of peeling off the mask, the pain of standing in the truth after lifetimes of forgetting, the pain of realizing you've been running from yourself all along. But Thoth reminded us that pain is not the end. Suffering only continues when we resist, when we fight the process, when we cling to the old instead of allowing the new to emerge. But when we surrender to the moment, when we allow what rises to be felt and honored, something miraculous happens. What once felt unbearable becomes the doorway to healing. What once overwhelmed us begins to soften. The shadows that once terrified us turn into teachers. We realize that healing doesn't come from escaping our emotions. It comes from finally allowing ourselves to feel them without fear. And slowly, the balance within starts to shift. The mind, which has ruled your life with fear, doubt, and control, begins to let go. The ego, which spent its energy trying to be enough, trying to be right, trying to stay safe, grows quiet. And in that inner stillness, something new rises, a deeper presence, a knowing that doesn't come from thought, but from the soul. This is when your soul begins to take the lead. And for the first time, you start to live from truth rather than reaction, from presence rather than protection. But here is where the real journey begins. Because remembering who you are is not a one-time moment. It's not a single awakening experience. It's a path. And now that the soul is awake, you must keep walking. You can't turn back. You can't fall asleep again. But the mind will try. It will whisper doubts. It will pull you back toward your comfort zone, toward old habits, familiar stories, emotional patterns that once felt like home. And if you listen, you'll forget again. But this time, forgetting will hurt more because your soul no longer wants to be silent. Your soul wants to live, to move, to express, to love, and it refuses to return to sleep. As your soul begins to lead, your awareness changes. You stop reacting. You begin to observe. You no longer try to control every situation. You allow things to unfold. Thoth called this shift the waking trance. It's a state where you are completely present, grounded in your body, aware of the moment, yet untouched by the chaos around you. You still live in the world, but you are not owned by it. You feel emotions, but they don't dominate you. You think thoughts, but they don't control you. You engage with life, but from a space of calm, centered awareness. In this state, time slows. You start to notice life again. A breeze, a breath, a heartbeat. You begin to taste silence even in the middle of noise. You notice your triggers, but no longer act from them. You see your patterns, but now you have a choice. You begin to feel the difference between reaction and response, between rushing and resting, between doing and being. And in this space, You begin to hear your soul speak louder than the world. But living awake in this way is not easy. It's simple, but not easy, because most of the world is still asleep. People around you are moving fast, lost in distractions, caught in fears that they don't even realize they carry. Staying awake in the middle of that is the real challenge. But Thoth was clear. The true alchemist doesn't isolate himself. He doesn't escape the world. He lives in the middle of it, walks through it, breathes with it, but doesn't let its noise shape his energy. He doesn't reject the ordinary moments of life. He transforms them through awareness, through presence, through intention. This is how transformation happens, not through grand rituals or perfect routines, but through simple, conscious acts, like taking a breath in traffic, smiling in the middle of frustration, choosing not to react when you feel triggered, becoming aware of what you allow into your mind, what you watch, what you listen to, what you speak, because everything you take in becomes part of your vibration. Thoth taught that your energy is shaped by your choices, and there are powerful practices to protect and raise it. One is the practice of active silence, not hiding from the world, but staying deeply present inside yourself even while moving through daily life. It's the ability to observe without judgment, to stay awake even while washing dishes, having conversations, or walking through a noisy crowd. Another practice is conscious choice, no longer reacting out of habit, but choosing each word, each thought, each step with awareness. And the most important of all, guarding the mind, treating it like a sacred garden, choosing what to plant, removing what doesn't belong. Because if you don't watch what enters your mind, confusion, fear, and heaviness will take root. And soon you'll feel tired, anxious, disconnected, without knowing why. But when you live with awareness, everything changes. Your energy becomes steady. Your light doesn't flicker. Your soul no longer visits. It becomes the one guiding your every step. You don't fall into old patterns so easily. You don't forget who you are, because remembering no longer feels like a moment. It becomes your natural state. You no longer feel like you're seeking something outside yourself. You realize that what you've been searching for your entire life has always been within you. And when this remembrance becomes constant, you experience something sacred. The return. Not a return to your past, but a return to your true self. The return to the source, to the place beyond time and space. The part of you that was never broken, never lost, never afraid. This return is not a place you travel to. It's a state of being you wake up into, a place where all searching ends, where you realize you don't need approval. You don't need to chase love. You don't need to beg for peace, because you are all of it. You are the source. You are the love. You are the peace you've been seeking. And if you've reached this part of the message, it means you're already remembering. A part of your soul has already awakened. You've already started to feel the shift. And if that's you, I invite you to speak it aloud or write it below. I remembered who I am. Let's show the world that more souls are waking up, that even in the middle of noise and chaos, there are those who are choosing presence, choosing peace, choosing light. If you'd like to support this mission and help spread more of these messages, check the pinned comment below. There's a way you can contribute and help awaken more souls.